What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the Tflip Show. Here we are, episode 3. I'm so excited. I mean, we got a big guest in the house here. I'm so pumped to welcome here none other than Mr. Gary Scott Thomas. Gary, how you doing down there?
Tyler, I'm great. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you for coming. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
Enjoyable. No, it's fun. It's like, how many times you get to go to somebody's studio and just, this is awesome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so excited that you're here. We're going to talk about all sorts of fun and exciting things and everything.
I'm
Gary.
open. Nothing off the table. I'm open.
All right. Well, let's get right into it.
All right.
So, Gary, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell for the people that don't know who you are and what you do.
I'm Gary Scott Thomas. I have been doing the morning show at KRTY, the country station in San Jose, since 1991. Don't tell me when you were born. I don't need to know that. I don't. And I'm originally from a small town in Alabama. I went to college and majored in English literature because I didn't think you could do something fun for a living. And I always thought radio was fun.
Yeah.
And I got a call from a guy I'd worked with saying, hey, we've got this opening in Louisiana, Lake Charles, Louisiana, Swamp Chunk is what we called it. Bayou 104, 10 to 2 at night, 10 p.m., 2 a.m. He goes, why don't you come do it? And I'm like, I don't know, Don, because I was going to be a teacher.
Oh.
And I'm like, I don't know. I should just, And he goes, Gary, let me explain your career choices to you. You can either talk to a stick or you can try to teach Shakespeare to 10th graders. And I've worked with you, and I know how much you enjoy talking to a stick. And so I said, well, and I kind of had this little conversation with myself, and I said, well, let me try it. And after a year, if I don't like it, then I'll go and get on with my life.
Right.
And about 4 months into it, I had the epiphany that, if you can do something fun for a living, you should do it.
No doubt.
And the healthiest thing I ever did is from the beginning, I never thought this business, the entertainment business, much less radio, owed me anything. That when I hit what is it? Is it the Murphy principle when you reach your own level of incompetence?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That when I reached my level of incompetence and it was time for me to go, then I'd go.
Yeah.
Right. But I never sat back, and I'd met too many grizzled, old, bitter people who were like, this or this happened and this. And it's like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Right.
I'll just continue to try to work the craft, figure out what I'm doing. And, my goal was to do mornings in a large market. That was my goal. I just wanted to do that. I love the freedom of mornings. People always ask me, you ever get used to the hours? And my answer is, hell no.
No.
You never get used to the hours.
Not
I
that
don't like
early.
waking up at 4:15 any more than you would.
Yeah.
Right? But I love the process of what's going on. I love the freedom you're afforded in mornings. And you learn how to deal with the fatigue. Because that's the thing. If I had to sum it all the ways up, I'm always tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just always am.
Yeah. You live a busy life.
There's part of me that sits back and goes, I wouldn't mind 3 months of just sleeping in and doing nothing. But I also know after about the third day, I'd go crazy.
Yeah. With how early you wake up? Well, what's your wake up call in your normal morning today? What's your
4:15.
4:15.
I get up at 4:15. I get up, walk downstairs, start the coffee.
Of course, it's important.
Go back up, brush my teeth, go downstairs, assemble my breakfast. My breakfast is a handful of dark chocolate almonds.
Your breakfast.
I put those in a bag, and I go to work, and I get there and get started, start scheduling the show as far as what I think we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put that out for Julie, and then because she's in Idaho, so I send her the list of, okay, here's what I have planned. And then we go on the air at 5:30. And after the first break, I have my first chocolate almond.
There's a first,
So
just one.
I bring a handful. And I try to
yes.
make them pass from 5:30 to 6.
Impressive.
While I'm doing my stuff. It just gives me that little sugar rush to go with my coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned if I eat anything bigger than that, it tends to slow me down. So when people would bring in coffee, or I've been at stations where I remember we had this deal with Burger King for 2 months where they want us to talk about their breakfast sandwiches. And every morning I'd come in and there would be a stack of breakfast sandwiches.
Wow, I've never heard of something like
And
that.
I would eat those. I'd eat 1, 2, 3 for a weird day. And I would just be, you know. And so I've learned over the years. I used to do oatmeal, but I got so sick of oatmeal.
It's the same thing. It gets old.
Well, now Julie's different. Julie eats the same damn thing every day. Every day it's the same thing.
Same thing.
And she's totally fine with it.
Really?
And
some people are like that, stuck in the routine. You know, they
and
have
she
to.
is all about the routine.
Yeah.
She's all about, I've got to have this. This is what I do. But she'll go in stages. Like there was a period of about 8 years where she had a taco for breakfast every morning.
Taco.
She'd bring taco in and she'd eat a taco for breakfast every morning. And I'm just like, wow, only you could make me sick of tacos.
Only you.
And I'm not even eating them.
Yeah. How do you handle tacos at 5 in the morning? The smell, yet alone to eat it.
That's her deal.
Yeah.
And now she's back up in, she's in Idaho now. I think she has a fried egg every morning.
Okay, well, that's mostly normal. You know, that's what you'd hope most would have, I guess.
And her husband gets up and makes her a fried egg and brings it to her.
Oh, what
and
a guy.
she eats her fried egg.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm having my dark chocolate almonds and near the twain meets. So I'm fine with that.
So while we're talking about Julie here, you're talking about bringing her up, and you know her so well, just the fact that you know what she has for breakfast every day. And so I'm curious as to, what's the dynamic like with her? You've worked with her for how long, and what's it like?
I was there when they hired Julie. I'm the longest tenured employee at KRTY. I started in 1991.
Right.
And I remember when everybody I work with and have worked with, I remember them being hired.
Wow.
And Julie, I'm sure she told you the story of the first time she met me.
Yep, she
and
sure
I
did.
was in the production room.
But I would love to hear yours,
Well, and as I always tell her, because the production was the way it was set up, is the control room was here and the production was literally right across from it and separated by a glass thing. And I'm in there trying to do a commercial, and salespeople will promise the clients that they'll get everything they want to talk about in 60 seconds.
Sure, of course.
So I've been handed this 90-second script that they want me to do in 60 seconds. And they would always give it to me because back in my younger days, I could talk really fast.
Uh-huh.
Every time, this is the days before you would want to, because to edit it, it's not like now where it's on a computer and you can digitally go through. You would literally have to take a grease pen, mark the tape, cut it out. And so I was trying to get this, and I kept screwing up. Or it would be 68 seconds or 64 seconds. And I'm trying to find words I can scratch out just so I could get there. And I had been working on this one spot for easily an hour and 15, 20 minutes. Just saying the same damn thing over and over.
Oh, yeah. Go crazy.
And I get angry. And what I've learned is I don't get angry at people. I get angry at inanimate objects. Because they're not going to get mad back at you.
No.
And I remember she was in the control room, and I hadn't met her yet, and I was just like, oh, man. And there was this chair, and I flubbed it for the last time. I picked this chair up and threw it down like that. And she's looking at me, she's like,
oh,
what
boy.
in the world? Once I released my anger, I sat down, bam, one take, got it.
Done.
So now it's done. And I walked over and introduced myself. I opened the door, and I'm like, hey, I'm Gary.
You didn't see all that, no.
She's like, so she always tells her, she's like, I thought you were a madman. And I'm like, I was just, and I didn't have enough clout to go, hey, rewrite this damn commercial.
Uh-huh.
I was like, whatever it takes to get the job done, I'll get the job done. Now I would go back and go, ain't no damn way.
No.
I'm not, you need to fix that. We're not doing that.
No.
And by the way, it doesn't work. When you just hear one of those commercials, it's just word type, it's a tsunami.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work, no.
So now I would sit back and go, take it to the salesperson and go, fix this, or I'll help you fix it.
Yeah.
Tell me what I can lose.
Right.
Tell me what the most important thing in this spot is. But at the time, I was just like, oh. And I remember her just going, what in the world?
What is this guy doing? Yeah.
But Julie, I always tell everybody, she's like one of my dearest friends, and I always give this example. My wife was 7 months pregnant with my second son, and I guess my oldest was maybe a year and a half old, right?
Okay.
My wife wakes me up at 2:15 in the morning. She goes, I am in level 10 pain. I've got to go to the hospital. I got to go now.
Wow.
Well, again, I don't have family in this area. I'm not from it.
Uh-huh.
I've got this boy. I can't take a year and a half. I can't pick him up. And I pick up the phone. I call Julie. I'm like, I got to take Heather to the hospital. I got to take her right now. Her only response is, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Didn't ask why, what, what are you talking about? I'll be there in 10 minutes.
That's awesome.
And she was there, and we've gone through so much. I was there the day she had a heart attack on the air.
What?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea about that.
We're sitting there on the air, and we're talking, and all of a sudden I notice she's not talking back to me. And you have to understand the way we set up the show. People always wonder, how can you do the show from Idaho?
Yeah.
I learned a long time ago, I never let who I was doing the show see my face, because it's so easy to do sight gags. We're on radio.
Right.
The audience can't hear sight gags, right?
Yeah.
So I've always set it up where, like, if I was doing the show here, Julie was here.
You're back.
So, I'd always set it up that the morning show partner could never see my face. Well, I noticed I said something that usually she'd react to, and she didn't say a word. I turned around and looked like that, and she's sitting here like this. And I'm like, I know something's wrong, so I ditch out and go to a song, and I'm like, are you okay? And she goes, I can't catch my breath, and my chest hurts.
Oh, my
Holy
gosh.
crap. And
Yeah.
I'm like, and Al had my producer at the time. I'm like, Al, you need to take her to the hospital right now. And I called her husband, and we always laugh at McGurk. McGurk's always like, what? No. He'll argue anything.
Sure.
And I called her up, and I'm like, Mike, I'm having Al take Julie to the hospital right now. And he's like, what? And I'm like, Mike, she didn't argue. And he knows at that point, we're serious now.
Yeah, something serious. She didn't argue.
He's like, which hospital? And I'm like, Good Sam. And took her. And I get off the air and go straight over there. And I don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I get there, and I'm with Mike, and I'm like, what's going on? He goes, she had a heart attack. Oh my God. And I'm like, now this is a Mormon who's never drank, has never been overweight in the entire time I've known her. She's a fanatical exerciser. And we were laughing with the doctor later because he came in and talked. And I'm like, hey, out of the three of us, who would you have picked to have a heart attack? Because she's the third option.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
Because her husband, we call him the spark plug. I mean, he's built like a spark plug. And, I'm not dainty by any stretch of the imagination. And it was just the most bizarre thing. And she goes, I'm fine. I don't know what it was. And I look at her and I call the nurse. Nurse, she's had another one.
Oh my gosh.
And they, kept her in the hospital. And it comes to find out that it's unexplained. Had no idea why it happened. There's no reason. The doctor told her, I got nothing. And so we've been through that. I've been through the birth of her children. She's obviously been through the birth of mine. My second child was born dead. And, and we went through that whole concept.
Yeah.
Where she had to go through that and, with me and stuff. And so we just have a bond that's, is when I sit back and say she's my work wife, I say that in the best possible way. She knows me left and right. Mm-hmm. And I know her left and right. There are literally no secrets between the two of us. Yeah. It's like, this is what's happening. We can tell when something's even just a little bit wrong.
Off from one to the
and
other.
we'll say, we do that to each other all the time. What's up with you?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Uh-huh.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And it's just that what I love about Julie, and I was telling you before we started taping this today, is that she's always who she is. Mm-hmm. She's true north. Yep. She is who she is. You may not agree with her all the time, but she's consistent.
Yeah.
And I've worked with morning show people that I never knew what I was going to find when I came in that day. Right. I had a morning show partner one time who did not talk for 2 days outside of just what he had to say, but didn't participate for 2 days. Huh. And I finally comes in the third day and he's all happy and stuff. And I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
He goes, I don't want to tell you. I'm like, why? He goes, well, you'll get mad. I said, no, I'm already mad.
Yeah.
You need to tell me what it was. He's like, well, I had some pimples on my throat, and I was really mad that at this age I was getting pimples.
What? He goes that long without talking just because of some pimples, some blemishes on his neck.
And it was. We laugh about it now. We're friends, and he's doing morning radio up in, I think, Montana. And I just had him on my podcast.
Oh, okay.
And we laughed about it.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh, you still remember that? I'm like, I know. He goes, I have to tell you, I'm such a changed man. He goes, I was a bit high strung at that point in my life. And I'm like, I get it. And he's had a baby, and that changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were able to sit back and look, but as what I've always said is that you know who Julie is.
Yeah.
And that makes what I do a lot easier.
Definitely. I have to say, it's just from when I did my episode with her just a few weeks ago, for me, you know, I told her, and I'll tell you, is, you know, to me, you guys are like celebrities. I was definitely nervous to meet her a little bit. I'm like, oh, she'll meet Julie, you know, I'm going to talk to her, this and that. But after just a matter of minutes of speaking with her, she's, like you said, just so true. She's the exact person that I've heard on the radio since I was a kid listening to KRTY to now. And it's like, I was not one bit surprised. And she then, in regards to the relationship, of your guys' relationship, she said, you know, you're the brother she never asked for, joking, right? She says that. That's kind of her line, it seems like. But she just talked, I mean, the chemistry that you guys have from beyond what you guys see it as, and as a listener like myself, and I can say confidently many others, is that you guys are unlike any other. And I think that's what makes your guys' show so special, is that the connection that you guys have, the bond that you guys have that you just spoke about, makes it that good.
Well, we've learned, I think the best thing about Julie and I, and we've said this before, is that we will argue points, and then afterwards we'll switch sides to see if there's any holes that we, you know, because it's not about proving our point right.
Yeah.
It's where am I not seeing something?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the hole in my argument? Where's the flaw?
Yeah.
And when you switch sides with somebody and you start arguing the other side, you start seeing it from their point of view. You start going, I never considered that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's, you know, we always say that's what has lost in America today. And that's the event of social media, that you stand on a soapbox and yell your opinion. Mm-hmm. And you don't care about what the other side is.
You're absolutely right.
Whether, you know, abortion, that's a hot button issue.
Yeah.
We sit back and talk, and Julie's vehemently pro-life. I tend to be a bit conservative. I consider myself pro-life, but I also understand the other side, mm-hmm. and I respect the other side. Mm-hmm. And I don't think my way is completely right. I see where there are gray areas. I see there's where you're like, I don't.
Sure.
You know, and if somebody on the other side could come back and go, all right, I see where you're at.
Yeah.
Now we have understanding. We don't have to agree.
Sure.
But we can understand each other. And when you form a basis of understanding, then you can have fun. Right. Then you can start playing with it. Then you can poke holes at each other.
Exactly.
Right? Because I respect your view, but
yeah. And I think that's what's really important is that so many people in today's society, like you just talked about, is that, you know, it's my thoughts only. And so many people just have their blinders on. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's logical or not. They don't want to hear it, you know? And so I think that's what's so important is in all aspects, all topics, no matter what it's about, it's so important that you got to be able to be neutral and hear other things, whether you agree with it or not.
Well, the moment you start calling people Nazis, right? I mean, yeah. and both sides do it. Uh-huh. Let's be clear. Just because I lean conservative, there's some horrible people on the side that I stand with.
Yeah.
And I try to call them out as quick as I do.
Sure.
Because the moment my father served in World War II, and the Nazis were truly evil.
Yeah.
If I disagree with you politically, that doesn't make you a Nazi.
No.
Right? And it's like we've so cheapened some of the terms of discourse now.
Yes.
That it lessens what it means. You know, if you call somebody a Nazi, you've just dehumanized them.
Yeah.
Well, why can't you kill them?
Yeah.
Why can't you? You know, and that goes into dangerous territory for anybody and everybody. It's like, let's take a step back and again, vehemently disagree. I had a friend of mine who's in politics, and that was his thing. Is he goes, there's usually so many things that people on both sides agree on, and then they'll find the two or three things that they vehemently disagree on, and chastise and condemn everything else you stand for.
Right.
And you see that. I mean, that's the thing that, like with the Trump thing. Trump, I had absolutely no problem with the way the news covered Trump, and none.
No.
Don't believe a word. Question everything.
Question everything. Always, yes.
My problem is, okay, do it for the next guy too.
Yeah.
Do it for President Biden. Don't believe a word. Question everything. Do that. That's what the press was set up to be.
Yeah.
And you need to sit back and stay on that. Just, you know, their job is to spin. That's their job.
Mm-hmm.
So sit back and look inside. And if we did that, if every president was looked at with a jaundiced eye, you're pulling for him.
Mm-hmm.
I've never not pulled for a president.
No.
You're pulling for him, but I'm going to be skeptical.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if I voted for you or not. And
Right.
if I didn't vote for you, I'm still pulling for you.
Yeah, still pulling for you.
I want the president to do great stuff.
Right.
Doesn't matter who it is. I'm pulling for President Biden as hard as I can pull for him.
Yep.
I want everything to go great.
Of course.
But I'm going to be skeptical.
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, at the end of the day, we all live in the same country, right? You know, whether you're pulling for them or not, we live in the same country, so you got to figure it out.
Well, and that's what we tend to forget is that we all do live in the same country.
Yeah.
We all, and there's so many, I've talked to so many people who are immigrants who just love this place.
Mm-hmm.
And they do not get why people would sit back and go, well, if this person wins, I'm going to move to another country.
Yeah.
Really?
Don't realize
I'm
what you
telling
got.
you, the rest of the countries are like, hey,
Yeah.
you guys got it pretty damn good over there.
Yeah.
So there's part of me that goes, I wish we could have a service corps where we would take 18-year-olds and send them for a year to live in another place.
Uh-huh.
Because that would enable you to understand what you have here. And I'm not talking about sending them to hellhole.
No.
Send them to England. Send them to France. Send them to Germany. Send them to any of these places, even the most civilized places.
Yeah.
And you would go, wow, well, that's not the way we do it.
Yeah.
And this is kind of cool that we do that. And it's just like I was hearing this guy from I think he was Rwanda, and he was talking about one of his team. He was on a basketball team, and his teammate was criticizing the president, and he was like, "Dude, you're going to get thrown in jail." And the guy was like,
What are you talking about?
No, you're not.
Yeah.
And he's like, it was just such a mind shift.
Yeah.
Because you would never say stuff out loud against the president because you would disappear.
Uh-huh.
And we don't realize that that is a large portion of this earth right now.
Yes.
You know?
Yep.
And the fact that we can go on and say, hey, you suck, or and we don't worry about being hauled off by
Yeah, what's going to happen to us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, it's a crazy world, without a doubt. And it's just bizarre that people don't realize, what we have in front of them. And sometimes, it's not the grass is always greener, but it just simply comes down to just like, you don't realize what you got sometimes here in this country, compared to others, right? I wouldn't even call it all the time. In some cases, it is ignorance, but more so just maybe naive even.
well, it's the old there's an old saying that if you have no food, you've got one problem. If you've got food, now you have a lot of problems because you can consider all the other problems. And I grew up in the Deep South in the 60s and 70s. One of the reasons I don't live in Alabama, I'm very proud of the team, but one of the reasons I left is because I could not take the overt racism.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. I couldn't live with it. I've seen racism in its face. I've seen the worst of it. There's a contingency out today, and it's usually younger kids who think that they're living in this horrible land. And again, I use that word cheapen. It cheapens what their forefathers went through because their forefathers suffered through things that they've never considered at all. Just never considered it at all. But we want to sit back and go, well, it's horrible because this. My thing is, are we perfect? Not by a long shot.
No.
Are we better? Yes.
Yeah.
And that's stuff I've seen with my own experience.
Yeah.
I've seen it better. If you would have asked me back in 1985 or 1995, would I see a black president in my lifetime? No.
No.
If you'd have said, do you think you'll see a mixed race black Indian woman as vice president? No, that's just never going to happen. Right here, right now. It's all the stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a big science fiction fan. I love Doctor Who.
Okay.
Right? So I'm a Doctor Who guy. Well, in my lifetime, I've seen a woman play the character, and they just announced a black gay man portraying the character. And for us to go, well, there's been no progress.
What are you talking about?
What measurement do you use for progress?
Yeah.
Because that looks, again, we're not perfect,
but
there's representation of everyone now
Yes,
that we've
totally.
never seen. You see how many different races and ethnicities are in TV commercials now.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's awesome.
I think so.
I think it's awesome because those people have been so underrepresented that we're almost overrepresenting them now, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
I think it's fabulous.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that you can be just geeked up about this country and what we do. Again, room for improvement, always.
Definitely.
But we should be proud of the things that we do and not convince ourselves that the sky is falling.
Definitely.
You know, that's what we always do. Everything's going to die. Global warming. No. Is it a problem? Yes.
Yes.
Are you going to die tomorrow, next week, next year? No. I was talking to this guy one time. I was playing golf, and he goes, "I just don't know how. I don't know how. It's got to be scary to have kids now, but because what are we going to leave our kids?" And I'm like, dude, my grandparents survived World War I and then had kids. And my parents lived through World War II and then had kids. Things ain't bad.
No.
They literally thought the end of the world. They built bomb shelters.
Yeah.
That was an industry in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. Your home bomb shelter.
Yeah.
Outside of some people who are a little bit more cautious, it's not a thing. You don't see bomb shelters for sale on network television.
No.
You did when I was growing up.
Yeah. I can't imagine that.
That's
bizarre to even think about.
Well, it is. I mean, we literally had, I remember we laughed because you had the bomb drill in school where they would make you get under your desk like somehow that was going to be magically protecting against a nuclear bomb. But that was the mindset.
Right.
We thought the world could end at any moment. Now, are we worried about Putin? Yeah, but I don't think we honestly think, well, he's going to come invade. No. We look at Kim Jong-un and we go, well, that guy's crazy.
Yeah.
And he could do something, but it's not going to start World War III.
Yeah.
Right? He could do something horrific. And the bad thing about it is if he did, he knows everybody in the world.
Yeah.
The first bombs would come from China. That's the thing that I firmly believe.
Yeah.
If he did something like that, it would be the people who were his overlords go, well, okay, well, we're done. We're not playing with you anymore.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that exists now that we live in such a land of plenty right now with so many opportunities that it's a shame when I see people think that I don't stand a chance. You stand a chance.
You do, yeah.
Hard work still pays off. Having the right attitude still pays off.
Definitely does. Yeah. It's just, I think what plays a large part in our world and the way people see it today is, like you touched on, is the media. Just the media is kind of just putting the spin on it. Like you said, they're there to deliver the news. And today it's answer. There's always, here's this, and that, answer. And it's
all commentary.
Yes, exactly.
And when you, again, I know like Fox has its slant and MSNBC has its slant. I'm totally cool with that. I was chagrined because I remember the day CNN came on the air. I remember watching the day CNN came on the air. It was run out of a mansion in Georgia. I'm not kidding. It was located in a big mansion. That was the entire TV network.
Yeah.
And it built its bones by being a hard news network. And let me give them kudos right now. Their coverage of the Ukraine is fantastic. It is. They're doing a great job on that. When they get back to being news, I don't know if there's anybody better. I really don't. It's when they get into the commentary and start actively campaigning against or for. Yeah. Now you've lost a trusted member, and you can tell by their ratings, which are just horrific. And the advent of social media has enabled, you can find news now. Joe Rogan in the Long-Term Podcast. I mean, that's a game changer. Yeah. That you can go on and talk for 2, 3, 4 hours.
I don't know how I did it so long.
I've never listened to a whole Joe Rogan podcast.
I know. I tried, but never.
I love him, but I never listen to a whole podcast.
You and me both.
That's why my podcast is an hour.
Yeah.
Because that's all I can take.
Yeah.
That's all I can take. That's all the time I have to listen, and that's all the time I have to talk.
Exactly.
And after that, I get a little, I need to be doing something. Or I can't, because I like listening to podcasts when I go to pick up my kids from school and stuff. That's when I get a chance to listen. And I have roughly an hour. Yep. So you got me for an hour. Use it wisely. Yeah.
I think the only time you can find Joe Rogan all that time is a road trip. I think that's the only time I've ever came close, if not finished one. Because, like you said, 3-4 hours.
But people get to say their entire thought. So
Uh-huh.
it's not a 10-second clip, or
Right.
it's not this or it's not that. And even then, they still try to do that.
Yeah.
They still try to take, pull clips out and say, look how bad he is, or look how horrible he is, or this. And it's like, well, no, did you watch the whole thing?
Yeah. So,
Because if you watch the whole thing, he pretty much covered both sides.
yeah, exactly.
And the fact that his listenership is so huge shows there is a thirst for that.
yeah, it's monstrous.
That people are out to find out for themselves.
Yeah, of all demographics on top of that. So real quick, before we get too far away from it, you did mention your podcast.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know, you have a podcast called
Here's What We Know.
Here's What We Know. Talk a little bit about that, how you got into that, and where did that start?
My buddy, Brian Kramer, had been trying to get me to do a podcast for 12 years. I didn't use them. I didn't understand them. So I'm like, I'm kind of busy.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm telling you should get on this. And about a year and a half ago, I had started listening to podcasts. And I'm like, well, I want to teach myself how to do it. I want to build the platform and teach myself how to do it. And the reason we came up with the name, Here's What We Know, is because that's just one of the things I say, especially to my kids or whenever. We're talking about something. And everybody will tell me their side, and I'll go, all right, here's what we know.
Uh-huh.
And I'll do this to my kids is I'll say what they think out loud, because we all are guilty of hearing the voice in our head, and it sounds perfectly logical when it's in your head.
Of course.
But if you sit back and go, all right, so let me get straight. What you're mad at is the fact that he's reading a book of yours that you aren't reading, right?
Uh-huh.
And oh, by the way, you were angry just the other day because you picked up one of his toys and played with it when he wasn't playing with it.
Uh-huh.
I just want to make sure I got that right.
Yeah, make sure we got
right?
that
If
all
I got
right.
that right. And then when you hear it said out loud, you're like,
Oh, that's
well,
kind of dumb, isn't it?
yeah. And so I've gone down this thing. I've done, I think, 80 episodes now. And that's the thing about podcasts is you're finding out. The hardest thing, I found out that the average length of duration of most podcasts are like 7-8 episodes, because it's hard. It's
Yeah.
the never-ending maw. And as soon as you get done with one show, it's like, well, I got to get ready for the next.
Yeah.
And the training I've had in radio, that's just what I do.
That's how it works.
It's I never get afraid of like, all right, let's do the next one.
Yeah.
And so I wanted it to be general topics because I wanted to be able to have the freedom to talk to anything or anybody about any subject.
Precisely.
I've looked at, as we go through this transition, which I'm sure we'll pick up on here
Yeah.
in a few minutes, but I'm looking at different venues and possibilities of doing specifically targeted niche programs of going, all right, because I've been doing country music for a million years.
Yep.
And I've accumulated a zillion stories.
Yep.
And have my own take on things. And so I wanted to go through that. I'm a man of faith. I wanted to be able to talk about how you handle your faith in the world of entertainment, which can be dicey.
Yeah.
As Chris Pratt's finding out.
Yes.
People want to cancel Chris Pratt because of something they think his church said.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, they never said it.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to sit back and go, well, if you're religious, then you must judge everybody.
Yep.
I don't know what religion you're doing. My religion teaches me don't to judge no one.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome everyone.
When I do my prayers, I don't ever pray for someone to change.
Yeah.
My prayers are always self-centered. Help me understand them. Help me be a better husband. Help me be a better father. Help me understand what I'm not getting from this person who I might be in conflict with, because that's where I can find my understanding.
Right.
I have no interest in judging. I just don't.
Yeah.
And even when I do judge, because we all do, we've all
Sure.
seen horrible parents, and you go. But I always try to take that one step and go, I have no idea what's going on in their life. I have no idea how they were raised.
Right.
I have no idea what they were taught. I have no idea what the childhood they suffered from.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm constantly trying to give empathy. It's what I try to teach my children. Always try to understand what the other person's going through. And if you can, then it opens up that freedom. And so that's with my podcast. I want to go into niches things, but right now I just enjoy, I've talked to so many people, stuff that I would never have even considered.
Exactly.
And I learn stuff, and I just find it fascinating. I was doing this brand class, and they're like, what do you believe? What do you believe? What's your statement you believe? When it comes to your podcast, what do you believe? And I had to work on it for a couple of weeks. And it's because it's got to be just one line.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up with, I believe our shared stories unlocks the essence of being alive.
Wow.
Because everybody has a story, and we don't think it's special because it's our story. And we don't think anything is amazing because we lived through it. And I always tell this, I was playing golf. I do that a lot. I was playing golf.
You and me both.
And I was playing golf over at Sunnyvale Muni, which is this little small golf course.
It's a nice course.
It is.
For what it is.
And I was playing, and I was walking with this old guy who was wearing overalls and a flannel shirt. And he had to be in his 70s, maybe even later than that. And he and I were walking, and I started talking to him. I'm like, what'd you do? You retired? He goes, yeah. I said, what'd you retire from? He goes, NASA. I'm like,
nonchalant.
What did you do at NASA?
Uh-huh.
And he goes, I was on Werner von Braun's team. I don't know if you know anything about Werner von Braun. He was the creator. He's the one that got us the news. Former Nazi who got us to the moon.
Know the name.
And I've been a space junkie all my entire life. And I started talking to him and heard stories. He told me this one thing. He goes, we could not look the astronauts in the eye because we were convinced we were going to kill them. Because the rockets blew up, and there were so many things that they had to take into account. And one mistake, death sentence.
Yeah.
One mistake. And he's like, we literally would not look them in the eye because we did not want to have that soul gaze with each other. And now when I kill you, I've got that. And you're like, isn't that? But again, it was his story, and he didn't think anything of it. And here I am just glomming on, and then what? And how do you do this? And how do you do that?
Well, I'm secondhand hearing this story. My jaw's on the ground here.
And it's those stories. And I've had so many situations like that.
Yeah.
Where somebody will just tell their story, and you have to take the time to ask, right?
Yeah.
And most of us get so locked up into what we're doing, we never ask.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing with golf with this Indian man who we laughed. He would never talk. He was always very nice, but he would never talk. He would just never. And one day, everybody in our group left except me and him. He and we're playing. And we're standing on the tee waiting to hit. And his name's AJ. And I said, hey, AJ. He goes, yes. I said, what was the best thing your mother cooked? And you could see him go back into his past. And he said, she made this vegetable dish. That was so, so good. And we grew up on a farm. And I would go out and pick the vegetables, knowing that my mother was going to create something. And we sat and talked the rest of the round. And to this day, he's just the chattiest guy now. He comes and sees me. He's like, hey, Gary, how are you? And we just, because we had that moment. And all it took was me asking him one question.
One question.
A question that nobody in his life had ever asked him.
And to even touch on it, and you and I are both biased, but in a good way, I think that's one thing golf brings to us that we don't realize enough. It's not just the game that we're out there hitting a little white ball into a hole here.
It's 4 hours.
It's 4 hours with someone that you get to take the time where you spend talking to someone. My friends are, I don't want to play with the friend. I'm like, well, it's not always the most horrible thing in the world. Yes, you might one in, I would argue, 20 chance you get an unideal person. But I think you have a way higher chance of getting someone that is like, this is an awesome person. There's been so many rounds where I've said, I'm so glad I got to play with them. That was fun. They were a great person.
I can count on my hands the time I played golf with somebody I didn't enjoy.
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah,
maybe 3 times. And one time it was this guy who was playing with his teenage son, and he was just being the biggest jerk. And my buddy, who was not a small man, he had said something to his son. And I said, hey, we're out.
Yeah.
And he looks out and he goes, what? I said, my buddy is going to kick your ass. He's going to floor you right in front of your son. I'm just telling you right now. So to keep him from going to jail and keeping you having a broken jaw and making your son have a bad day, we're just going to leave. We're just going to walk off the course.
Wow.
And because it was so rare, it stands out.
Yeah.
The majority of the time you sit back and talk to people, and that's what I love doing. You start finding out their story, and it's like, and everybody has something that's just fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never met a non-fascinating human.
Yeah.
If you just take the time to pull the veneer off just a little
Uh-huh.
bit, then they start telling you all this
Yeah.
other stuff. I had another friend who talked about, I asked him, I'm like, what did your mother do? He was a teacher. And I'm like, and he was from India. And I'm like, do you ever go back? He goes, I go back every 3 years and build a school in my mother's name because he's rich.
Yeah.
He goes, I don't trust the government. He goes, so I find a place that needs a school and I go build a school and I name it after her.
That's incredible.
And we've been playing with him for years,
Oh, yeah.
right? And none of us, we were all like,
What? Yeah.
you are kidding me. And he's the sweetest, nicest man. And we all knew he was sweet, but we didn't know the depth of how sweet,
Yeah.
how he truly lived his moral code.
Yeah.
And it was inspiring. I always try to, I've learned over the years, I try to surround myself with good men
Yeah.
because they make me better. And there's something, I have female friends, but there's something about the way men interact with each other. And if you surround yourself with good men, they lift you up.
Yeah.
Just like bad men will pull you down.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can, I've been telling that to my kids, always surround yourself with good men. Always surround yourself with somebody that you go, that guy, I'd like to be like that guy, because they will pull you up.
And what do you say to the people that feel like, I can't find anybody? I feel like, I want to find those good people, but they're not showing up in my life.
You got to search for them, and you've got to be the good person. Once you change and listen, I went through a period of a couple of years where I was not, it's not that I hurt anybody or did anything, but I was all about my needs. I was, as I tell my kids, I was as selfish as a human could be, right? The beautiful thing now is, because I get told this story to my kids, I'm like, first thing I did when I woke up in the morning was think about what I wanted to do today. And the last thing I do before I went to bed is, what do I want to do tomorrow? That was my whole life. Now I'm 5th, 6th on the list, because it's my wife, my son, my house, my dog. And what I've learned is the farther down I move on the list, the happier I get.
Imagine that.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You don't want to be, everybody has to take care of themselves at some point.
Sure.
But you don't want to be number one all the time, because that's the worst place to be. It really is.
Yeah.
You want to be down the list when it comes to where your focus is. So
I like that. I want to let you run there because that's something special. I really like that perspective, though, because I haven't heard that from someone other than, of course, we say that as human beings, we want to be as, humble and selfless as possible. But then to hear you go on about that and explain it into your further thought process, I think that's awesome. I love that.
I tell my kids, it's only because I've made every mistake you can make, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't keep you from making your mistakes.
Oh.
I can't. But I can try to give you a guidepost and say, here's where a lot of the pitfalls happen.
Yeah.
And you've got to make your mistakes. But as long as you don't kill somebody or do something horrific to another person or steal or something like that, as long as it's the mistakes you make with interpersonal people, those can be fixed.
Yep.
You can always go up and say, I'm sorry, and mean it.
Yeah.
Don't go, I'm sorry you got mad. That's not an apology. That's, well, I'm sorry you had a bad reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Who needs that?
Yeah.
I make sure that if I've made my wife angry, we have a rule in our house, and we did this ever since we got married. I told her, here's how I operate. If you're angry at me, I will not come back with a, yeah, but, or you did. No. You're angry, and you have the right to be angry. Tell me why you're angry. I will do nothing but listen. Then we're done. I'll give you my rebuttal tomorrow, because now you've had a chance to cool down. I've had a chance to cool down, and we'll sit back and go, all right. Okay. And what we found is the vast majority of the time, the person who was angry will come up and go, I blew that out of proportion. I'm sorry. That's because you had a time, but you were heard.
Yeah.
And really, that's what we all want to be.
That's what we want.
Is heard.
Yeah.
So we always have that rule. If you're angry, tell me what you're angry about. And I'm not going to go, yeah, but. I'm going to go, all right.
Listen.
Okay. And then I can come to you tomorrow and go, okay, here's why I did what I did. And then you can be far enough away from your anger to go, all right, I see that.
Yeah.
But I never sat back and go, you didn't have the right to be angry. If I made you angry, you have the right to be angry.
Yeah.
So now we'll work on fixing it, but let's get that distance first.
Yes.
I've always heard the term, don't go to bed angry. And I'm like, I've never bought into it. I think sometimes we as humans need space. We don't need to throw spackle over a hole. Let's fix the hole.
Yeah.
Let's fix the structural damage. And then we can work on painting it over once it's fixed. But let's not just throw some tape on the wall and say, hey, that hole's not there anymore. There.
It's there. I like that. That's a good metaphor there to kind of lay that out. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So okay, we went from your podcast, talk about the grand scheme of life, to end up to where we are now.
I told you I would go down rabbit holes. That is what I do.
I think
my friends are like, oh, God, here goes Gary. My sons will do that. Oh, God, here goes Dad. Here goes Dad with one of his stories.
But, I loved it. I loved all of that because it wasn't just a rabbit hole of nonsense. It was really important stuff, and I think is great. And so, but we talked about, okay, your life and stuff like that. I want to talk a little bit more about KRTY. So we addressed it. I addressed it with Julie about the future KRTY, what's happening. I'm curious about you individually. What's going to happen for you? Do you have kind of a where you want to head and where you want to go?
This has been, and I don't know how much time we have left. So again, because I'll rabbit hole it. So
well, let's hear it.
I'm going to try to give you the abridged version if I can.
Let's hear it.
When we found out we were going to be sold, and we come to terms with that, then I started thinking, okay, what am I going to do? And I started looking at this, and we thought about we're going to try the stream. We're looking at streaming because I honestly believe that's the future. I don't know if FM radio. New cars don't come with AM radios anymore.
Yeah, right.
They phased it out. And a friend of mine who's in the business also said, would it surprise you if 10 years from now they stop putting FMs in? And I'm like, no, it wouldn't.
Yeah, sadly enough, no.
And I think I've heard from so many people that they listen to us already. If you go through TuneIn or Echo or Alexa or whatever, that's the internet.
Yep.
So I think that's the path, and we're going to try to make that happen. But for me personally, I've decided to try to expand my brand because I've built it up so much, and there's so much. As a friend of mine said, he goes, "You've been really limited in what you do. You've been in this lane, and now here's the lane. And what are you going to do? Are you gonna? Because there's so many different venues and avenues, and I've never had to think that way. I've never had to go, well, I could do that, or I could do that. So I'm thinking about one of the things I'm looking at is doing a daily video stream, and creating from there and coming up with that, and maybe looking at doing possibly a daily podcast that has a narrow focus.
Yeah.
That I can do. All right, we're going to talk about country music. We're going to talk about entertainment. We're going to talk, like I said, about faith. Whatever. That allows me to just go there and create from there and open myself up. Because when you're working for the station, you are representing the station. And so you don't want to upset any apple carts.
Yep.
But when you're doing your stuff, well, now you're all in.
Yeah.
And having the courage to do that it's daunting, but it's tremendously exciting at the same time.
I agree.
So we're going to see where it takes us. It's kind of funny how things here, literally in the last 2 weeks, some people have come into my life who said, hey, this is this, and you could do this, and here's how you do this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of wild that it took, we're recording this in May, and this stuff happens in June.
Yep.
And we've kind of been a little slow on the uptake of what all we're doing because we've all been doing this for so long. We're so used to this lane.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Well, I've had time to expand it and look at it and research it and work on it. So I'm out here and everybody else is here starting to come out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the future. I think the stream will work. The radio jobs, I'm open to radio jobs, but it's such a scary field right now.
Yeah.
And the pay has gone down dramatically. Yes, Howard Stern makes a lot of money. Nobody else does.
No.
There's not a lot of people out there back in the days when, people in Nashville and Boston and were making $3-4 million a year back in the 80s,
Right.
which was like $10 and $15 million a year.
Yeah.
Those days are long.
Yeah.
But we also didn't have the option to do what we're doing now,
Sure.
and creating that. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting for me to find out, I've heard from so many people, and as my buddy who did this, he's been saying, hey, try this. He goes, I started mine and I had nowhere near the loyalty or brand name that you have. And he goes, you really should jump on that. And I've never had to think that way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. It's ironic in this way. Our ratings are crazy right now. They're silly. They're silly.
In a good way, I assume.
I explain ratings this way. Anything over a 5 is considered really good.
Uh-huh.
My highest ratings before this was I had a 6.9 one time, and I was king of the world. Ratings came out in March, and we had a 12 in the morning.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm like, well, that's cool. It can't be real. So when the next cycle comes out, if we can just not fall below a 7, I'm going to be thrilled.
Yeah.
We can just only fall 5 points. That'll be amazing.
Uh-huh.
Well, the next ratings came out, and we went from a 12 to a 17.
Oh, my gosh.
And in fact, it just came out in the trades 2 weeks ago. The Gary and Julie Morning Show is the most listened to country music morning show per capita in the United States of America.
That is incredible. Congratulations.
Well,
That's
thank
huge.
you.
That's
It
huge.
is, but and now we're going away.
And now that just does not make any sense.
But I quit to this. I don't know how much baseball history you know. I get to do Ted Williams. I get to hit a homer and walk off. Right?
Gary, I got to say, I absolutely admire your glass half full, optimistic approach to this, because this is a rather, especially for you and Julie who've done this for so long, a sad thing that's going away, and especially for all the listeners out there. But yet here you are with this perspective on it where you say, well, this is only going to open new doors for me. This gives me more doors. I don't have just one door I got to keep going through. I got more doors. And you're wording it as a walk-off home run, You're retiring from KR2. I'm not really retiring, but still on a note unlike any other with your ratings.
It's amazing. I was explaining to my son, it's like I've been doing this for so long, and it's like the good Lord said, hey, I know you'd keep doing this for another 31 years if I let you, but I need you to do something else now. I need you to pivot, right? And I'm going to make it where you're going to have these opportunities, and you're going to have the situation where you can continue and try to grow in this and see where it takes you. So it's easy to crawl into the fetal position and go, why? But as I told you at the beginning of this conversation, I never thought this business owed me a living. I never thought it owed me anything. It's been tremendously good to me. Yeah. I've lived a life where I literally, if you would have came up to my 14-year-old self and said, here's what you're going to do for your life, and here's some of the experiences you're going to have, I would have looked at you like, yeah, and I'm also going to live on Mars. It's just impossible.
Yeah, right.
You can't live a life like that. I mean, my goal when I went to college was to one day make $1,000 a month. If I could make $1,000 a month, I would be the highest paid member my family has ever seen. That was my goal.
Yeah.
Right? So when you sit back and look at the stuff I've done now and the experiences I've had and the people I've met, really?
Yeah.
What a wonderful ride.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter. I'm thrilled that I got to do this.
Yeah.
And the good Lord has always been really good to me. Why would I stop trusting him now?
Right.
Because he's always, I do the work. That's what I've learned. You do the work and then see what happens.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to do the work and do everything I can to make myself prepared for it. And then all of a sudden, it's amazing what, if you're not a person of faith, the universe, you have the karma, and the universe has a way of treating you right when you put in the effort.
I think no matter what you believe in, it's the way this world works is that everything happens for a reason. For bad, for good, whatever it may be, no matter you're a person of faith or not. I totally think that's the case.
The only thing you can control is your reaction.
Exactly.
You can't control
Love that.
anything else. So whatever happens, it's how you choose to react to it is how it's going to color how you view it.
Yeah.
And how people view you.
Definitely.
And I don't want to be that guy where you're just like,
Yeah.
Oh boy, here we go. Sob story. Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
You know?
So I want to ask you, you talked about the people that you've met, incredible people that you've met along the way through KRTY since 91 is what you said. So I'm curious as to reflecting back, what are some of your most, I guess we'll say, surreal experiences of people you've met or just overall things that have happened for you with your career at KRTY? And I'm sure that is a
way too
rabbit
more
hole.
than the time we have allotted here.
So if you had to pick out one thing right here off the top of your head.
Gosh. Well, I mean, recently, Garth Brooks at Club Rodeo.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
Garth
exactly
Brooks
what Julie
at a
said.
dive bar. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so beyond the pale. It's just crazy. But when I got hired here, I went on the air on a Wednesday. And on Saturday, or Sunday, we had a concert at Shoreline. We were doing a country fest at Shoreline. And I remember that because it was the year of the Oakland Hills fire. So I'm driving up to Shoreline. I don't know anything. I've been here 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see the smoke, right? But I get there, and we have all these different country stars. But the headliner was Tammy Wynette. Now, you have to understand, and I've told people this before, I do not get nervous around anybody unless my parents thought they were stars. Then I get nervous. So I was there waiting to do her introduction. And back then, Shoreline used to be able to, you could pull the tour buses all the way up to the stage.
Oh, wow.
I mean, literally, the tour bus was, here's the stage. The tour bus was sitting right here.
Huh.
And I'm standing right here. And Tammy Wynette comes off the bus, and she is having a fight with her teenage daughter. I mean, it is going full force. George Jones' daughter.
Uh-huh.
It is going full force. And she finally said, "You get your ass back on that bus, and you don't come off until I get it." You know, and I'm like, wow. Now what am I going to say? Tammy Wynette is having a moment.
Uh-huh.
And I always remember she got on the bus, she stops, she turns around and goes, looks at me and she goes, "Hi, I'm Tammy Wynette." I mean, total pro. It was all behind her.
That's incredible.
And she was going to leave it there. She was going to do the show. And the moment she got off that stage and got back into that zone of the bus, back on. Mom, and we're going to have this out.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, things like that are things that I will always remember. You know, Dolly Parton. How can you not love Dolly Parton?
Uh-huh.
You know, and met her a number of times. And just, it's easier. I always say on my podcast, it's easier for me to tell you who I haven't met than who I have.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've just met, and I've got to know them doing it for a long time, and nobody knew who they were.
That's something that Julie talked about that I think is so cool. She threw out names like, at the time when they were first doing shows at Club Rodeo, for example, is like guys like Jason Aldean, Taylor Swift, Eric Church, where these were nobodies, and they said it was just you guys and a few of your friends at Club Rodeo. And now you guys are at a point where you guys have this credibility where, hey, we got Jackson Dean, for example. He's at Clovis Shots, but still, we got Jackson Dean coming out. Come see him.
Because we think he's going to be big.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the cachet you build up over the years where we can tell people, listen, and we do that on the air. Hey, remember that time we told you there's this guy named Jason Aldean? Remember that time we said, this Luke Bryan guy?
Yeah.
We think something about this Luke Bryan guy. And so people have learned to believe us, and that's the thing I'm going to miss and we're going to keep it up with the stream. But I've been trying to tell listeners as we get ready to wrap it up on the FM signal that KRTY is simply the most influential country music radio station in America. It is, by any stretch of the imagination, because we were locally owned and operated.
Yep.
So we got to do whatever we thought. Our owner was an old man who he didn't understand any of this. I mean, they just go do what you do, and if you make money, I'm fine. And that's what we did. And so he had no idea any of this stuff. So he would just let us do what we were going to do. And so we were able to take the time and build these relationships. Hey, we had a lot of misses too.
Sure.
I make no bones about that. The reason we have these acts is because we took the time for all of them. We gave them all a fair shot. A lot of them, the majority of them didn't make it. But the ones that did, and they remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, I always sit back and say, Little Big Town was our house band for a while because we'd bring them in just so they could make some money and pay their rent.
I think I heard your interview recently.
Yeah.
You talked to them about that.
And they remember that. And, you know, all these the Eric Church, you know, that we tell the story. was in a parking lot.
Yeah.
Saying, come on out, meet this guy. He's out in a parking lot. He's, you know. And but they remember that, and that's why they'll do stuff like Lady A will go play a Clola Chance when they're an arena band.
Yeah.
You know, because they remember it. They knew that we were there from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing to have, that you have that relationship with the artist.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fun.
I envy you of those experiences, because I mean, these are big name people. To me, that's a superstar, and these are just, I told Julie, it's like, you guys, it's almost like a first name basis. Oh yeah, just Eric's coming over, hang out, you know, whatever it is at the studio, whatever it may be. And that's just, it's so cool. And I think, again, I can say it over and over again, that's what makes KRTY so special from a listener's perspective.
And I want the listeners to know that they should always expect more. Don't let whatever country station comes in on the FM, they're going to try to get by as cheaply as they can.
Sure.
They're not going to go that extra effort. And this is not a criticism of them. All right?
No.
Let's make sure I'm not criticizing them. They're in the world of corporate radio, and they have to hit numbers and do all this. So it's not a criticism.
Mm-hmm.
But as a listener, you should expect more.
Yeah.
You've been given more. We've done things that, frankly, nobody else in the country can do. So it can be done. It just takes a lot of work. It took a lot of work to create that space, because San Jose is a non-traditional country market, right? So we had to create that space and push it out from this way and invite people to come in and go, no, it's really cool. Come on, we got room for more, right? And to get them in, it's a tough job. And that's what I want as we go off the FM dial. And again, KRTY.com, GaryScottThomas.com.
Yep.
Stay with us, but when you get in your radio and just turn on a country radio station, demand more.
Yeah.
Expect more.
I love that. I love that as you're kind of going off the FM, your guys' outro. Expect more, ask for more, you know. Don't settle.
Don't let them take the easy way out.
Yeah.
Because we've shown you it can be done.
Exactly.
They have to realize it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah. It ain't
See
easy.
what happens.
Yeah. Well, Gary, I want to wrap things up. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, from hearing your stories that you took the time to share with me and the listeners here, I think is absolutely special. So I can't thank you enough. Is there any?
Hope it made sense.
Oh, every ounce of it, every last drop of it. Is there anything that you want to wrap up with? Any last call outs or shout outs or anything of the sort?
You know, for me, it's just been great. I mean, I love all the people I work with. I've worked with some really special people, and I'm continuing to work with them. And I can't thank my family enough, because, you know, my wife and my kids. My wife's birthday's tomorrow. I'll be at work. I'll be at work tomorrow night. I'll be there. So you do miss a lot of those things where they allow you to go do this. And when they have to share you with people.
Yeah.
I've been out in public doing stuff, having dinner with my kids, and somebody will recognize you and they'll want to come over and say hello. And as I was explaining to my kids, these people have given us this life.
Yeah.
Dad can take a few minutes to talk to them, right? And my son went through this kind of weird period where he was like, why do people talk to you? You know, why? He almost took it like it's an affront. And I'm like, babe, this is such a cool thing Dad gets to do. So when somebody takes the time to screw up the courage to come over and talk to me, I said, because imagine if you just walked over to a stranger. Hard to do.
Yeah.
But when you get a chance to talk to someone, and I remember what it was like the first time I met the guy I listened to on the radio. I was scared to death.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared to death. And when they take that time to give me that courage, I want to give them that moment. I always want to be who they hope I am,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Definitely.
And so it's just been a great thing. But yeah, my wife and children have put up with more stuff than my wife. Because my wife, everybody thinks that, you know, I come home and do another show, right? And as Julie will tell you, I'm actually off the air a fairly quiet guy. I take the time to listen.
Yeah.
Because that's where all the stories are.
Yep.
So I tend to be fairly quiet. And I told one time we were at a party and somebody said that. She's like, he doesn't do anything. I'm like, you think Barry Bonds, he comes home and his wife goes, hey, could you go hit me a couple of dingers in the backyard? No. It's the same thing for me. When I get home, I'm like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. And, you know, I'll come home after work, like on a Friday night. I've got an event this Friday night. I'll come home and my wife knows, you know, here's your martini. See you tomorrow.
Clock it out. Exactly. Well, Gary, I can tell you that from, you know, this is the first time meeting each other.
Mm-hmm.
And like I told Julie, always hearing in the radio as long as I grow up. You're everything I've hoped to be.
I've enjoyed this, and it's such a fun thing. When you invited me to do this, I was like, absolutely. I find it fun. I love the concept. I love the concept of being interviewed is always weird.
Sure.
It is.
Yeah.
Because when I'm doing the interview, I'm listening.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like you're doing. You're
That's what I'm doing
listening
right
because that's the stories.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a weird thing to be on the other side.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's always strange. And
Yeah.
you know, you've got so many stories. It's like, well, which one do you pick?
Yeah, which one you pull from the files.
So
Yeah.
the Tammy Wynette's always fun to me. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of times where I was on the golf course.
On the golf course, I see the
somebody-
trend here, huh?
Somebody had left their sunglasses, and I picked the sunglasses up. They were playing a group in front of us, and I picked the sunglasses up and put them in the cart because I knew they'd come back for them. All of a sudden, the man drives back up, and he walks up, and he goes, "Hey guys, did you guys find a pair of sunglasses?" And I said, "Yes, Willie Mays, we certainly did, and you can have them back if you'll shake my hand." He's like, "Okay," and I promise you. Y'all, I'm 6'2". I'm not a small man.
Yeah, no.
My hand fit in the palm of his hand.
Oh my!
They're the biggest
gosh.
hands I've ever seen in my entire life. And at the time, he was in his 60s. And I knew if he had wanted to break every bone in my hand,
He
he could
could
have just like that. But those are the kind of things where you're just like, wow. Same thing. On a golf course, I'm playing by myself, and I pull up behind this group, and I get up on the tee, and I grab my scorecard, and I walk up, and I said, "Smokey Robinson, would you just sign my golf cart? And I won't do anything else." This is a day
Leave you
before
alone.
cameras and pictures.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, yeah.
Yeah,
He
sure.
signed my, and I still have it.
That's incredible. That's awesome. I feel like we have touched like the tip of the iceberg of your stories. I wish this could be a Joe Rogan episode of how long
It could
it
go
goes.
4 hours, but I got to pick the kids up.
I know, exactly. We got to get you out. So, Gary, thank you again. Folks, make sure you go find him on the
GaryScottThomas.com.
Yeah.
Here's what we know.
All
Just
that.
go to my website, GaryScottThomas.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. That's where you'll find mine.
You heard him here first, folks. So thank you again so much for listening. And Gary, thank you so much for being here. I can't thank you enough. And I think that's a wrap.
Thank you, my friend.
All right.